There's a lot of character archetypes that I enjoy. The bro character, the hulking giant with a heart of gold, the rival. Video game characters are cool, and I think it is amazing how we can connect to them through different means. Side characters are important, but I think it is also very important to have a great main character. But that also makes me question, what makes a great main character? We live in an era where video game protagonists come in all sorts of flavors. Pretty anime boys, chosen ones, dudes raised by legends, have body enhancements, are super trained soldiers, or in some cases, a mix of many of those things. And I'm not saying that instantly makes a protagonist bad. It doesn't matter how perfect or overpowered they may be. You can make any sort of character work so long as you write them well, make them entertaining, and or they have some inherent charisma to them. But there's one particular character archetype that no matter what, it seems that it will always work and resonate with me without fail. Everyman, or as some people prefer to call it, just a guy. For those that somehow don't know, an everyman is a character that can be defined as a common man, a typical or ordinary person. And that's it, there's not much science behind it. It can be your dad, your uncle, that weird guy you see on the street, or even you. These types of characters don't have anything that you will call unique or super special. Superpowers? Not by default at least. Enhanced strength? Unless they work out. High intelligence? At most they probably have a degree in something. Again, these characters could be literally anyone, and that is exactly what makes them so incredible. By being as simple as they can get, it is much easier to relate to them, and above all, they feel more humane. Even so, there are times in which I still find it hard to pinpoint what exactly makes a character an everyman. Like, there's all of those things I just talked about, but then they'll have something that makes them a bit more difficult to call just a guy. Look at Mario, for example. We all know this guy. He's just a simple, middle-aged Italian man from Brooklyn, but more than just being an everyman, for me, he's more akin to a cartoon hero. I mean, high jumping like a madman, getting power-ups like crazy, and fighting all sorts of critters. Mario is awesome. I love the guy. But I find it hard to consider him an everyman given how over-the-top and cartoony he is. For me, there's also some extra things that I look forward on an everyman. For example, the age. This is probably independent to the concept of an everyman, but I honestly find protagonists who are past their prime so damn awesome. I play a lot of video games, mainly the Japanese kind. In those games, it is fairly common that the main characters are teenagers or young adults who get to fight people in high powers, or even gods themselves. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. This is still awesome so long as the story is good and the characters are endearing. But let's be fair, we all grow older. That's inevitable. As a consequence, I feel it is much more difficult to connect to a younger cast of characters nowadays. Not impossible, but it is harder. So it is very special to see that no matter the age, you can still achieve something great. One of my absolute favorite games to pull this off is Yakuza Like a Dragon. This is a game that shows you that no matter how old you are, it is never too late to start again. No matter how low you may be, the only way left for you is to go up.
Hell yeah. Why not become a hero at 40, right?
And that's a message reflected throughout the main characters. This is a cast of grown adults from their 30s, 40s, and even 60s. It is no exaggeration when I tell you that the Like a Dragon gang is one of my favorite JRPG parties of all time. And the fact that they are grown adults who still have fun adventures, struggles, and development is simply magical. Despite the more over-the-top aspects of this franchise, they still feel human and relatable. Another thing I like to consider for an everyman is how grounded and believable they may be. The setting usually plays a big role in this. Horror games tend to pull off everyman protagonists extremely well most of the time. Just put an average guy in a situation and there you go! You got a protagonist that is believable, awesome, and probably relatable. But because of this, it makes me wonder, can you find an everyman protagonist in a fantasy setting? In a world filled with magic, dragons, and gods? Can your average man rise up against all the odds? And actually yes, it is a bit rare, but some fantasy games can pull this off, and I believe that Particio Yellowwheel from Octopath Traveler 2 can fall in the category of an everyman in a fantasy setting. Let me explain. Octopath Traveler 2 is a game that gives you a super diverse cast of main characters. The Prince of a Kingdom, a Beast Girl, a Miracle Apothecary, and a Genius of Magic. Among this colorful party, Particio stands out by being a humble merchant. I mean, yeah, you can technically make him learn magic, but his base class, the merchant, is very straightforward. It's all about getting money, giving turns to allies, avoiding attacks, and hiring mercenaries. It's a class most inclined towards supporting allies. Out of all 8 main characters, Particio's story is the most grounded of them all. He's someone who experienced extreme poverty in his youth and as such, sets out to find a way to help those in need and erase poverty from the face of the earth. Unlike the other stories, he doesn't deal with corrupt kings, mythical beasts, or dark gods. His biggest threats are rich people, a tiny dog, and the evils of capitalism. It's a very simple story, but again, it stands out a lot due to how grounded it is as well as Particio himself. He's just a guy with amazing ideals and an unrivaled charisma. And one more factor that makes this trope one of my absolute favorite ones is that the everyman can also be flawed. You know, sometimes they can't necessarily be a good person. I'm not saying that all of them have to have flaws. Again, Particio is objectively an incredible man. But I also like it when a character can be a bit more realistic. They can be selfish, cowardly, or even have a traumatic past they still haven't healed from. While these flaws can make a lot of people hate these protagonists, I think that also makes them very interesting. Just to clarify, with this I'm not saying, oh, this is what an everyman is like and every other opinion is wrong. No. I'm just trying to explain that, in my eyes, these factors help to improve a main character for me. We can agree to disagree with this, but it's something really fun to think about, you know? Actually, there's something that I'm very curious about and I wanna hear your thoughts of. Can female main characters fall in the just a guy or every man category? You know, just call them every woman? I'm saying this because when people bring up these sort of down-to-earth protagonists, it is usually men, and like, yeah, I get why. But how often do you see something like that happen to women? Maybe there's not that many examples, but let me show you something. Jill Stingray from Valhalla is one of my favorite video game characters of all time. And you know why? She's not a magical prodigy, she's not a badass bounty hunter, a princess, or anything like that. Her occupation is being a bartender who mixes drinks and changes lives. As a person, she's someone who lives day by day, giving her fullest, trying to put up a cool act in front of her friends and customers, but in reality has a dumb sense of humor and has a past and struggles that many people can empathize with. Valhalla is a game that shows you a few weeks of her life, how she lives through them and how she relates to the people she meets. You'll learn about the events and conflicts that happen within her world, but it's not like she's directly involved with them. You're just shown how these outside events affect her and those that surround her. This is exactly why I love Jill so much. She's realistic, she's believable, she's grounded. She's simply a person who believably can exist. So again, that begs the question. Can a woman fall in the category of an everyman main character? Just, you know, maybe by altering the name a little bit? I think it is possible. If the character fills all the requisites perfectly fine, then I don't see why it should be excluded just because of their gender. We don't do that stuff on this channel. To finish off this video, I would like to talk about 3 main characters that are incredible to me and are basically the main reason I came up with this idea. Whenever I hear the terms everyman or just a guy, these 3 characters always come to mind. So, shall we get started? Resident Evil is a franchise with a lot of likable and charismatic main characters. Every single person has heard of the likes of Chris Redfield, Leon S. Kennedy, Jill Valentine, and many others. But most of the time, these characters tend to have a military background of sorts, which again, doesn't diminish how awesome they are. But it's so funny how one of my favorite characters in the series is just a random guy with an IT degree. And yes, I'm talking about Ethan Winters. For some, he might be boring, but for me, he shines so much within this franchise. And once again, it is simply because he's just a guy. He doesn't have the same sass as Leon or the boulder-punching strength of Chris. He's someone who experienced a living hell just to find his missing wife in RE7 and rescue his daughter in RE8. He fought all sorts of nightmares, from molded creatures, werewolves, vampires, lake monsters, Magneto, the average white family, and he emerged victorious every single time due to sheer will and the love he has for his family. And I don't want to spoil this to anyone who has yet to play these games, but it is so touching to see how far Ethan will go for the ones he loves. I won't go into detail, but I'll just say, the tragedy of Ethan Winters is one that I thoroughly enjoyed and stuck with me even to this day. I seriously do not understand how some Resident Evil fans can say Ethan is lame because, sure, he's not a badass like the other protagonists in the conventional action hero way, but the fact that he is just a random guy, a victim of bioterrorism who still put his family above all else, makes him one of my favorite examples of an everyman main character. Here's a name you all know.
Frank West, photojournalist.
Frank West has to be one of the most recognizable characters of this trope. I've never met a single Dead Rising fan, let alone a Capcom fan who dislikes this character, as long as we ignore his portrayal in 4. And that is because Frank is such a charismatic and realistic character that it is hard to not be endeared to him. Frank is as simple for a journalist who arrived to the zombie-infested town of Willamette with no objective other than to find the scoop of a lifetime. This will lead him to unveil a conspiracy to find the truth of what really happened as he fights his way through hordes of zombies, dangerous psychopaths, and American special forces, all while he has to rescue survivors involved with the mess. What makes Frank such a standout of a character is that he achieves all of this despite being a simple 36-year-old photojournalist. The most special thing about him is that
I've covered wars, you know.
But other than that, all he has is his camera, his burly physique, and whatever he can find around the mall. Frank's journey is a really cool one as his original objective was made out of pure selfishness, but throughout his experiences in the mall, he finds it within himself to save innocent people, as well as exposing the culprits of the outbreak. I cannot describe Frank as a saint or a conventional hero, and that's alright, he's just a regular guy who does his absolute best, flaws and all. One more thing I like about him is that he's not the main driving force within the conflict. He's the main character, sure, but it's more like the story of Willamette happens and he just acts and reacts to it. Just put this in contrast. Chuck Green, the protagonist of Dead Rising 2. In that story, he gets pinned down as the culprit behind the outbreak, so he has to find a way to clear his name, discover the truth, and save his daughter. He has a personal stake on this, while Frank, there's not really any consequence to him not following the story. So long as he catches his helicopter at the end of the game, he can still escape with his life. I love Chuck as much as I love Frank, but for different reasons. And the latter is one that I like a lot simply because he's a random guy who covers wars, you know. The Yakuza series has a lot of amazing main characters. At worst, you might think, this guy's alright. But this franchise has managed to consistently deliver a plethora of incredible protagonists. You no doubt know the likes of Kiryu, Majima, Saejima. They're all great characters, but I cannot call them everyman protagonists, and you know why? They feel very invincible. These guys are living Yakuza legends. It feels like no matter the situation, they will come out on top no matter what. Does that make them bad? No. I know I keep saying this a lot, but no. That doesn't make their characters any less. But of course, I'm gonna be more attached to characters that feel more grounded and realistic. Ichiban and Yagami come very close to the just a guy type of main characters, and honestly, they kinda are. I wish I could spend a lot more time talking about them, but right now, there's one specific guy I want to focus on, and I think deserves the title of Everyman better than anyone else. Tatsuo Shinada from Yakuza 5. I will admit that in the past, I haven't been the kindest towards Yakuza 5. But no matter what my feelings for that game may be, or used to be, I have always said that the Tatsuo Shinada arc is easily the best thing about this entire game. Hell, one of the best stories in the franchise. Yes, just these few chapters alone. Yakuza 5 is a game about dreams. What are you willing to sacrifice and give up for what you desire the most? And I believe that Shinada encapsulates this message better than anyone else. Shinada is a man that during his early 20s achieved his dream of becoming a professional baseball player. In his first game, against all the odds, he managed to score a home run that granted victory to his team. But not too long after that, he was unjustly accused of cheating and gambling, which eventually led to him being permanently banned from the sport. This effectively killed all of Shinada's motivation in life, spending more than 10 years living day by day, constantly running away from his problems and making up excuses to ignore his past. Tatsuo Shinada's story is one of the best because it isn't just about uncovering the truth of what happened in that baseball game. It's about how Shinada takes that in and reconciles with his dream. It stands out so much because he's a man that achieved what he wanted and was stripped of it. And yet, despite many years having passed and living in a miserable state for so long, he manages to rekindle that fire inside of him. It is extremely beautiful and inspiring. I could go more in depth about it, but I feel that this is a story you should experience as blind as possible. I cannot do justice to how good it is. Another thing that sets Shinada apart is his fighting style. Unlike other protagonists, Shinada lacks a lot of discipline and finesse, and instead fights like a caveman, using sheer force to overwhelm his opponents and grabbing any weapon he comes across. It's not the most refined fighting style the series has seen, but it's a great reflection of Shinada's character. It shows you how little fighting experience he has compared to the other protagonists. This is why Shinada is among my top 3 favorite main characters in the series. He's no Yakuza legend, he's not a kung fu master, a trained cop, or a guy who really loves Dragon Quest and has strong hallucinations. He's just a random guy who had his dreams crushed, but finds the determination to go on. It's just incredible. The Everyman is a type of character that can never miss with me. It is amazing to see these random people achieve great things and be inspired by it. And the best part is, those guys could be anyone. They could be you. They could be me. And I think there's something very awesome about that. But anyway, now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the Everyman trope? Do you like it? Do you find it boring? Which characters would you say fall in that category? Please let me know in the comments, and when you do that, thank you so much for your time. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and Patreon. Anything helps. Have a wonderful day, and take care! I'll see you next time!